When we use the Loomis method to draw the portrait, we start by simplifying the skull to basically just the top part of the cranium and reducing it to essentially a sphere or a ball. We assign different areas with proportion, like the bottom of the nose, the brow line, the hairline. These are the basic elements that we use to measure when we're using the Loomis method. We start by basically roughly sketching in a sphere. I tend to hover above the paper, just barely touching it until I'm ready to settle into the full dimensions of the sphere. The next thing you're going to want to do is look for the arch of the side of the cranium. And if you look at his forehead, you see that red arc that I've drawn. That's telling you the next part we're going to need to draw. So it's going to be not the full length of the sphere. It's actually going to be slightly lower than the top and slightly higher than the very bottom. And you can see in the photo, it's nicely lit. So on his forehead on the left, you can see that arch that we're drawing in. And this is where the skull ceases to be round and flattens out a bit. The next thing we're going to do is look for the position of the head. And that vertical line I drew is telling me that he's more or less looking straight forward. It's slightly tilted, but I'm going to simplify it in this case to be a straight line. And then his head is actually tilted slightly so that if you draw a line between his eyebrow and his ear, this is the best way to find that line. So I'm going to draw the vertical that represents the position of the features of his face, and then I'm going to draw that diagonal line that comes up from the top of his ear to his eyebrow. And what I have now is basically a little that crosshairs is telling me the position of the tilt of his head. And now what I'm doing is from that edge is I'm feeling my way around the sphere using that crosshairs, and I'm curving over the front of it since that front part is still very much round. The next thing you're going to look for is the hairline. And usually this is fairly easy to find. In this image it is. And that will be slightly below the very top of the sphere. And the next thing you're going to do is from the bottom of that oval, inset oval you drew, you want to draw another extension on the bottom of that oval. And that bottom one is going to indicate the nose line, actually, the bottom of the nose. And so at the center of the ball is basically the brow line. And you can see here that, remember, this is the cranium, essentially. So the lowest part of that ball is actually the bottom of his nose. And we're going to, from this point, extend the jaw down. And what you're going to do to start doing that is find the central axis point of the face. And I'm drawing how it curves up around the top, but notice how from that middle line is his brow line, and from there it's going to jut down about as straight as the line I drew on the side of the head is. And now we're going to find the bottom of the jaw. And how we're going to do this is we're going to make 3 even parts from the hairline across, from the brow line in the center, and from the bottom of the nose, which is at the bottom, near the bottom of the sphere. And those should be relatively close to even. So what I'm going to do is add another, measuring those, I'm going to add another dimension that's the same distance as those other 2. So basically we'll have 3 even spaces, and that's going to give us the bottom of the jaw. And going from that bottom corner, the ear is a good place to sketch in at that left bottom quarter of that side part of the head that we've drawn. The ear can pretty reliably be placed there always, and then adjusted for relative proportion later. It's good now to extend the jaw out, and and also from the top of the forehead extend. You can also start looking for the cheekbones, and you can find that by going back to that original side of the cranium and sweeping down in a nice arc somewhere around to where the chin ends. And I'm going to do similar thing on the other side. So from this point, you basically just have an armature with which you can get into more specifics of the figure. So from this point, you would then really get into looking closely at the model itself, or from the photo you're working from, and start finding the specifics that are specific to that individual. With things like the position of the mouth, those are generally, if you were to divide that bottom between the bottom of the nose and chin into thirds, it's at about the 2/3 mark up from there.